Hello friends, this is Lauren. Thanks for joining me here on the Miss Ink Stamps YouTube channel. I'm so excited to share with you a brand new release that's coming out this weekend, and I'm going to be showing you a little sneak peek at a couple new stamps here. So first I have on the left Math Class Background Stamp, and on the right I have It's All Relative stamp set, and I've colored in the images. You can see there's a messy desk, our scientist, and we have a chalkboard as well as a chalkboard eraser and chalk. So I'm going to set aside my colored in images and we're going to work on creating a sentiment onto our chalkboard. There's a lot of great sentiments in this stamp set. We have You're Brilliant, It's All Relative, I'm Relatively Impressed, Science is Like Magic But Real, Because You Matter, You're a Total Genius, The Universe is Made of Protons, Neutrons, Electrons, and Morons, which I think is the funniest. If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, what is an empty desk a sign of? So I thought I would use the Because You Matter sentiment for my chalkboard. So I have it already stamped colored with alcohol markers, but I'm using a embossing ink to emboss my sentiment. So I used a little anti-static powder first, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment like 3 times. I want to make sure there's a really good stamp and good amount of ink on my image here. And then I'm going to use a super fine or an ultra fine white embossing powder and apply that to the sentiment. So I'm going to set that down, clean up my little mess here that I have in my coffee filter, and pour that right back into my container and use my heat gun. I have one with 2 settings, so the highest setting to melt that embossing powder down. Once it was cooled down, I just used a Swiffer cloth to wipe up the excess anti-static powder on my chalkboard. There's a little bit of assembly that I need to do, so I'm going to use some liquid adhesive and a pickup tool to add my chalkboard eraser as well as my little stack here of 2 pieces of chalk. Now that those are in place, all of my images and my sentiment for the front of the card is ready to go. I'm going to work on creating a background. So I'm going to grab my favorite frame die set, the Eieio frame die set, because there's so many different A2 kind of nested shaped dies. I'm going to use this scalloped one that's going to be about 4 by 5 1/4 once die cut, and then I'm going to use that stitched inlay rectangle die. So I'm going to use the largest one with some Kraft cardstock, and then I have some light gray cardstock with the smaller frame. So I have my pieces ready, and I'm going to do a little bit of stamping to decorate these pieces of cardstock. For the center gray piece, I'm going to grab that new background stamp, the Math Class, and I'm going to ink up, well, I'm actually not going to use like a block or a MISTI for this. I'm going to just use my magnets to help keep this in place on my glass board. And then I'm going to ink it up with some Morning Mist VersaFine Clair, which is a gray ink, and because I want it to be kind of tone on tone on this gray cardstock. So I'm inking it up. I'm inking more than what I really need, but I just want to make sure that I get a nice clean stamp. And then I'm going to turn my cardstock over and I'm going to lay it onto the math stamp, doing my best to get it straight. And then I have a piece of scrap paper and I'm going to use that to help me apply pressure to the cardstock and stamp that wonderful background stamp onto this gray cardstock. So I'll peel off that scrap paper and I can peel off carefully so I don't smear anything my gray cardstock, and you can see that really cool background stamp on that gray cardstock. For the Kraft cardstock, I'm going to grab the 2 atoms and I'm going to stamp them around the edge of this piece of cardstock with that same gray ink. I only am concerned with adding a few popping out from behind the gray panel. So I'm going to just use the larger one and stamp it 3 times on this background. And then I'll grab the smaller one and I'm going to stamp it a bunch of times just around the edge, filling in some of the areas that I have opening in that Kraft cardstock. I'm not really trying to create a pattern or anything symmetrical, just throwing them on there where I think they will look good on this Kraft cardstock. Once I'm all done, I'm going to put away my stamp set and I'm going to grab a side folding A2 card base, just made of some sturdy white cardstock. And I'm going to go ahead and get my adhesive so we can start layering our different elements here onto this card base. I'm going to grab a combination of liquid adhesive, some standard foam adhesive, and then thin 1 millimeter thickness adhesive. So I'm going to start with liquid adhesive and glue this gray panel, or not gray, Kraft panel to the card base. So it's going to be slightly smaller than my A2 base. When scored and folded, A2 is 4¼ by 5½. So there's just a little bit of a white border around the scallop, which I really like. Then I'm going to grab that standard foam adhesive and I'm going to apply strips behind my gray background stamped panel. I'm just going to add 3 strips, make sure there's some good stability behind this panel, and then I will peel off the release paper just using a pokey tool to help with that and adhere that to the center of my card front. Once that's ready, I'm going to grab liquid adhesive again. This time I'm going to use my thinner glue and I'm going to apply liquid adhesive behind my chalkboard. So I'm making sure I know where I'm going to place it. I do end up putting it a little bit too center. I wish I would have put it a little bit more to the right, but that's okay. It still looks great. And I'm going to attach that chalkboard to my card front. Once that's in place, I have that thin foam adhesive next to me and I applied it to the back side of my desk, and I'm going to add that to the front of the card towards the bottom right. And then I'll use that same foam adhesive behind my scientist and I'll attach him to the left. I went out of the lines a little bit on my coloring for the chalkboard, so I'm trying to use his head to make sure I get that covered, but not too much where you can still see the chalkboard eraser. I'm going to use that longer sentiment that I really liked, the second one I really liked. If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, what is an empty desk a sign of? And I'm going to use that same gray ink and just stamp that right on the inside of my card. With that, that will finish off this card, so let's take a final look. I'm so excited for this new release coming out on Saturday. I hope you are too. So many great non-fandom and fandom collections are going to be released this weekend, so let me know what you're excited for down below in the comments, and if you're going to grab this stamp and background stamp as well. You can find a list of all the supplies that I've used down below in the description box. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Miss Ink Stamps YouTube channel. Happy crafting, and make sure to check out even more inspiration here on the end of this video. Bye!